Hi, my name's Keith Cooper of Northlight Images. This is an Epson P5300 printer, a new one from Epson. P5370 in the US, 5360 Australia, New Zealand. It may have other numbers, but the base number for it is the P5300. I'm going to have a look at roll paper printing. Now, I've looked at things like panoramics and stuff like that, but this is some general comments related to using roll paper. Why so? Well, over the years, I tested a lot of printers, larger than this, smaller than this, and quite often people ask me about printing on roll paper, and it's quite obvious that they've not done it before because of why they think the advantages of printing roll paper. First up, the most common one I heard of people who haven't used roll paper printers is that it will in some way save you money. Well, that depends. The pictures that come out when you print roll paper are often curled and you need to straighten them. The paper size may not fit the size of print you want. This, for example, this takes rolls up to 17-inch width. Now, the paper that's in here is Epson Premium Luster, but that comes on 16-inch rolls. So, for starters, if I wanted to print an A2 sized print on this, well, A2 is slightly bigger than 16 inches, so you can't fit it on the paper. If I wanted to print an A3 plus size print, well, A3 plus is 13 inch by 19 inch, and I'll show an example in a bit of doing that. But 13 inch by 19 inch on 16 inch paper, that means even if, and this printer has a cutter, which things like the P900 don't have, means that you're going to waste some paper. You also use up a bit of paper at leading trailing edges. Sometimes it needs trimming. Certainly if you want to print borderless, you can only print borderless here on roll paper. I've looked at that elsewhere as well. But in general, you print on roll paper because you want some feature it offers. Now, this printer has a paper cassette, and I've shown using the paper cassette with phototype papers. You can feed paper in the top here. So if I was going to print an A2 print on a nice A2 paper that I might not have in roll format, or if I had 17 inch and didn't want it quite that size, A2 sheet, I'd feed it in here. Of course, the advantage with roll paper is you can print as long as you like. So I've shown panoramics using custom paper sizes. There is a panoramic mode available in Epson Print Layout as well, which I'll show an example of in a bit. But in general, you print on roll paper because it offers you a definite advantage. Now, let's say you think, I want to print lots of prints and I want to print lots of small prints on a piece of roll paper and then trim it to size. That's good, but you will need software to do it. Now, I've got several reviews of some software that used to be around called ImageNest that did that. It was a Mac software, really good software, still runs on one of my old Macs and will drive this printer here. That's great. I can put in, if I wanted to print lots and lots of 6x4s, I could print them off all day long on this. You'd have to cut it out afterwards because obviously the trimmer only trims this way. There's no trimming of that direction for it. Now, you might want to use, and this is an instance where printed or other software might be useful, something like the Mirage rip. Now, it's not a true rip in that it gives you complete control over the ink channels and things like that, but it's a layout program. It handles profiling, all sorts of stuff. Now, I may, if I have this long enough and get some spare ink for it, I may be able to have a look at the Mirage rip on this, but I'm not sure about that one. But that allows you to do layout. Now, that software, it's not cheap software, but it's good software. I've used it many times, certainly with larger Epson printers. I tend to print one-offs on roll paper, so I'm not really worried about layout options. But if you were doing, for example, you had roll paper and you wanted to print one largish print and maybe 3 or 4 small copies on a roll and then trim them afterwards, something like Mirage will do it. Now, Epson Print Layout, which I'm going to show here for examples of printing, not because it's absolutely great, it's pretty good, but because it's free. You can use it from Photoshop, you can use it standalone, you can put imported files, you can export a file from a photo application that you're using and print it using Epson print layout. It's also the same on Mac and PCs. Now, I only use Macs. Don't ask me a PC printing detail question about PC drivers. I have not used one for many years. So I tend to cover stuff more based on the principles. But anyway, I've got this set up that I've loaded the paper. You just pop the paper in, put it in here, follow the instructions on here. I've covered that in other videos as well with roll paper. But here I've got roll paper loaded and I just want to print an image. Now, I've got an image here, one I shot years ago, which I've exported from Photoshop, although I could equally well have just run Epson print layout standalone. And I've dropped the image into it and I've set it, it knows, it interrogates the printer. So I've set it to Epson Premium Luster photo paper. I've set the paper size to A3. Now, the paper source, I've put roll paper with borders. Now that's a standard. Quality is high quality purely because that's good enough. You don't need the high quality print option on this paper. You don't get any real benefit from it. Layout, I'm just going for the standard layout. Obviously I've got it at landscape, but at 13 inch by 19 inch, this won't fit on the sort of paper I've got widthways, so it's going to print lengthways, and that's possibly a waste of paper. Anyway, I've altered the width settings, and I'm using one of my own profiles. So there's nothing really more for a basic print than loading it up here. Of course, I should say that the real work has gone on beforehand in the processing and editing of the raw file and preparing the file for print. That's an entirely different matter. But anyway, I'm just going to press print here. Now, I've pressed print. It will take a moment or two because, as I do have to remind you, the speed of the laptop is limited to the processing if it's a largish file. The printer will just burst into life in a moment or two, hopefully, and then we'll print and we'll cut. Now, when you load up paper here, you do have the option, there we go, the fan's starting up, not a quiet printer. You do have the option when you load the paper of getting to doing a leading edge cut. Now, you don't normally need that, but if you've got a roll that you've cut by hand or something like that and you've used scissors to cut it, it's worthwhile doing a leading edge cut. You lose a few inches of paper. Once again, it's that wastage of paper that you will get it. You'll lose a bit of paper, but you will get a nice clean edge. Now the paper is loaded in here. It moves back and forwards a few times. The print head has sensors in it. It goes across. It measures the width of the paper. The important thing to notice, on the display here, it doesn't tell me that this is 16-inch paper, which is, Epson Premium Layout, Premium Luster 260. It tells me that the width of this actual paper is 407.1 millimeters. Now, I'm sure you could have that in inches if you really wanted to, but anyway, that figure is worth knowing for when you're printing on that stuff. If you use, and I'll show there's a different mode for printing on this, on roll paper in a moment, when this has come through. But knowing that width of paper helps you set things correctly. The printer's and software system is pretty smart in that it knows what paper is here. You've said what paper type has come through here. You don't have to, the computer will override what's set here, but I have a long-standing feeling that if I set the paper type correctly here and set it there, that doing it twice is no great effort, but the amount of wasted paper it's saved me over the years from not having the right size or something like that. If you're doing lots of prints, that's great. Always take care with that very first print that you double check all your settings, that you've got them right, because yes, it's supposedly roll paper is cheaper, but you still just don't want to be wasting it for the sake of it. And I say this one is on a 3-inch core. You can use papers on a 2-inch core. Better quality papers are not that common on 2-inch cores, but if you do, there's an adapter for it if you want to print borderless. But that's one of the areas where it really does pay to read the manual. There's a PDF, well-written PDF manual for this printer, and it's worth checking it. As you can see, the print's starting to come out. The borders of this, I mean, I've specified borders on the computer when I've done it, but the problem is that once you start doing it, a wide paper and then fit smaller sheets onto it, the borders can be all over the place. Now, it is possible to set these borders fairly accurately, but if you're doing reduced sizes, you're going to have to do some experimenting and accept that you're going to lose a few bits of paper and a few prints for it, because these things, they always seem to have some little gotcha in them. I've used printers like this, and I've got a P5000 upstairs, which is identical to this, but with a different print head and more inks. It's a more commercial printer. I've got one, and still I occasionally get things wrong, and I've used it for years. Just be careful. Start with simple stuff. If you're getting a printer like this, I would definitely say get yourself a pack of Epson premium luster, glossy photo paper or whatever, A4 letter. Practice basic prints, test images first so that you understand how the printer works. I know with a new toy like this, the temptation is just to dive in and go off and printing huge great prints and things. Well, yeah, I will do that on occasions, but with the important proviso. This is not my printer, doesn't mean it has to go back. I didn't pay for the inks, and I didn't have to buy this paper. This is one that Epson gave me a while ago for testing printers. One of the reasons I use it. It's a good standard basic luster paper, but just be careful. Now, this print is actually, the picture is an aspen trunk in Colorado. And one of the bits I always like about some of the woodlands in Colorado is the aspens. And because I've quite often gone there in the autumn, or even in sort of April time when there's not many leaves about, you get groves of these aspens, and these eyes just look at you. And yeah, anyway, that's why I took this picture in the first place. Here it comes. And there we have an A3 plus 13-inch by 19-inch print with border, but printed on roll paper. Now, the problem here, as you can immediately see, is you've obviously got this hefty border along the top. You've got the border along the bottom, which I hope is roughly what I've set there, but remember these things, double check the measurements when you want to do any accuracy here. But to actually use this, let's say I had a mount for 13-inch by 19-inch paper, I would have to probably trim this. So I've got an extra bit of border on either end, and I've got this border at the top here. Now, you might think, after a while, trim off lengths of paper, keep them like this. I found that the number of shopping lists and other to-do lists and things like that is nowhere near the number of strips of bits of paper like that. And remember that a paper like this, photo paper, because it's on a sort of polyester base, this is not recyclable papers. That's a good reason, if you're concerned with that, to look at matte papers, art papers. The whole issue of recyclability of papers and things like that is something that's going to be more important over the years. But photo prints like this, I would prefer a paper like this. I would prefer a Barita style paper on a natural base. But that's just that. But all I'm showing here really is not necessarily the picture quality. It is the fact that it's offset. If you print other sizes, it's got to be fitted onto that roll. You've got to do something with it. So anyway, I mentioned another option for printing here on roll paper here, and I'll just go and set that up and show you what it is. Right, this is an image I took for a commercial image I took for a client a few years ago, and with this one I've loaded the image into Epson print layout again, paper steel premium luster. I've set it for roll paper borderless auto expand, high quality, yeah, but I've set the layout to panorama. Now panorama will actually print the image at whatever length is required to fit the paper. Now I'm showing the expansion here so I can see what bits of the print of the image, if any, are being lost through the borderless print. And I've set the roll paper width here to a standard, you can't set it precisely, nearest to what the actual paper width is. Now, it says 406.4, and if I remember rightly, the actual printer said 407.1. So that when I mentioned that potential drift, if you want accurate placement, that's one of the areas. Now, I'm printing with a profile, I'm doing normal printing, and yeah, relative colorimetric. Anyway, that's the image I'm going to print. Now, rather than do another one, here is the print that I've just queued up, rather than show you yet another print just coming out. What to notice about this? Well, it has printed borderless. I've got no border. Edge to edge borderless. It's white at the top anyway. So it's printed that way. And it is printed to the width of the paper to whatever length I want. It also has added a bit of a border at that end and at that end. So you've got borders on it. Once again, you'll need to trim. If you print directly, as I showed printing with panoramic print, and I've showed borderless prints before, there are options to get trimming done. But if you're going to use roll paper like this, one of the things you almost certainly will need to get is a decent rotary cutter to be able to make nice clean cuts on this without damaging the paper or leaving marks. So that particular one, and as I say, you can see the scale of it from it is a ruler. And those are some small chips. And as I say, I do industrial photography. This is the sort of macro photography I do, or this is just close-ups. But it's industrial stuff, not plants and bugs and the likes. But anyway, that's an image printed on roll paper there. That's printed borderless using the panorama setting. That's printed on roll paper, but specifying the page size as A3+. What I'm going to have to say though is, I know people hate doing this, but do have a look. If you're going to do any stuff like this, have a look through the manual. The PDF manual is well enough written. It's a lot more clearly written than they used to be, and it will cover all things like this. But the key things to remember are that just because you call this 16-inch roll doesn't mean it's necessarily exactly that. So if you want accurate placement, you will need to take careful measurement and you will need to experiment. Yes, it does mean you'll use that paper. So there you have it. Various reasons I would and wouldn't use roll paper. For most prints, I found good quality prints, I much rather print on a sheet. It comes out, I can use nice thick media. I do like printing. I've got some nice, and I've got a whole stack of them here. I've got some very nice media. I've got some canvas as well. I'll do a test on canvas. But in general, find out what you can and can't do with roll paper before you just think, oh, it does roll paper, great, that's going to save me money. Yeah, maybe, I doubt it. Not unless you really know what you're doing and have a very specific need for it. I see this, certainly the P5000 I've printed on sheet as often as I've printed on roll. Now I've got some very nice roll papers, but I've also got some very nice sheet papers as well. So I'll be trying some more higher quality stuff at that, where the actual image, what it looks like, is rather more important necessarily than, as I've shown, just the size here. If you've got any questions, let me know. Please do subscribe to the channel, it's much appreciated, and thanks for watching.